Hey guys, I'm Lauren Beecher and I'm here with Kristen Hinderstocker. We're both physical therapists at Health and Balance Physical Therapy. And Kristen is here with us today to talk about mindful eating. So I'll let her tell you all a little bit about herself.
My name is Kristen Hinterstocker. I'm a physical therapist here at Health and Balance. I have been a physical therapist for over 20 years. And up until very recently, I felt like I could talk quite easily on the concept of mindful eating. And I think we will all acknowledge that lifestyle, including how we eat, where we eat, why we eat, has changed pretty significantly in the last couple of weeks. So feeling that it's a very timely topic. I will say that perhaps our expertise sometimes comes more in the realm of exercise or posture, those types of things. But I also feel a strong connection to the importance of eating mindfully. There are times when clients come in and they will make a comment that they exercise their tails off and get injured. And oftentimes, what they are saying is, I am exercising like a maniac so that I can eat whatever I want, whenever I want. And while that may be a good plan until injury, suddenly needing to rethink that a bit.
Oh, yeah. And I know I have experienced that myself. And I think of just coming from, like, even though we are movement professionals, exercise professionals, we spend a lot of time talking to people and thinking about just our lifestyles and how much that impacts our ability to move and our ability to be healthy. Just having someone to talk through that with and think about, okay, what are some things that I can start to do to just not only get rid of this pain, but live the quality of life and the type of lifestyle that I want to live.
Absolutely. Initially, I was very familiar with the concept of the freshman 15, now adjusting to the new phrase of the quarantine 15, which again, I hope everybody's hanging in there. But hoping that just with some discussion, some tips, that hopefully we can all come out with better strategies and feeling like we are in charge of what and how we are eating.
I love it. Well, as we talk, if any of you that are listening right now have any questions, feel free to type them in the comment box and we will do our best to get to them. And if after the fact you're listening to this, feel free to type a question or a comment or send us a message and we'll do our best to respond. So why don't you start just about telling us a little bit about what mindful eating is? What does that word or that phrase mean?
I think that sometimes we understand the concept of what mindless eating is. So sometimes I think in finding the definition of what is mindful eating, it is important to point out that we are aware of the eating the entire bag of chips without realizing it while you are watching something on TV, eating the entire container of popcorn while we are at the movie theater, eating the entire basket of chips without even realizing that your drinks have not even arrived yet. That would be mindless eating. When we are looking at what a definition of mindful eating is, at least taking into consideration the speed with which we are eating something, the portion or the amount that we are consuming, and kind of taking the opportunity to, even for one moment, consider, am I actually hungry at this moment as I am eating, or am I simply having something because I am stressed or anxious or bored, tired? Is there an emotional component to it as opposed to that true physiological component and needing food as fuel?
Oh, yeah. No, and I think in these times of increased stress, and it's not just right now living in this world that we're in, maybe it's things are really crazy at work or there's something going on with a family member or a loved one, and we kind of use food as a way to find comfort. And lots of other strategies that can be utilized besides food, but it's right there and it's so accessible and it's so easy. And I think of right now when so many of us are at home all day long, even if we're working from our homes, the kitchen is a lot closer or it's a lot easier to kind of grab those snacks or not even thinking of it as a snack, but before you know it, and I know I'm guilty of it, if I grab the bag, I eat until it's like, oh, where did a lot of that go? And just thinking of that as how can I change some of my strategies or how can I kind of cope with stress or other stressors in my life in a way that is beneficial or at least not negative for my body.
And I think that you bring up a fantastic point that now more than ever is a time to really at least attempt to incorporate mindful eating, simply because accessibility in and of itself has changed. How we shop for groceries has likely changed. The food that we may actually be able to get has changed. I know I have an unusual eater in my home who has items that pretty much fit on two hands. These are how many different items he eats. So when one of his beautiful staples of chicken is challenging to find at the grocery store, oh, and did I mention that it's only certain types of chicken? So
that box gets like even more and more and more narrow.
So after a few different strategies, luckily chicken is something that is more readily available. But even in a family context, things that we have very much taken for granted that are readily accessible, that also has been a bit of a challenge. But taking this as an opportunity in that particular instance, and again, we'll keep our fingers crossed, but here's our opportunity to try some new foods, just simply because those options are limited. Or here is the opportunity to perhaps put a little more forethought or planning into what we are physically bringing into our homes.
Oh, yeah. So, with all of the changes these past couple of weeks, almost going on 2 months, what are some things that you have done or have heard people doing successfully to bring some of those kind of healthier, nicer food options for our bodies into your home?
Um, I will admit that oftentimes I was the grocery store shopper who I had a generic list in mind of items that I needed. And currently, I actually haven't even been into a grocery store in a very long time. We have taken advantage of the at least sign up for items online, and then you can pick them up. However, as mentioned before, the laundry list of items that are then not available at the store because you're not physically there, it is a bit of a challenge. But I think also a fantastic opportunity if you're not typically a shopper that goes off of a list or kind of pre-plans what meals for the week or snacks for the week are going to look like. That now is a beautiful opportunity to have a very specific idea so that you truly can get in and out in a timely fashion.
Yeah, I love that idea. And I think too, even, when you're making that list, it makes you think about, okay, what do I really need? And I know it helps me stay accountable of like, okay, I don't need to go down that aisle because there's absolutely nothing in it that's on my list. And thinking of just that idea of how the grocery store is set up. And when you walk in thinking, okay, if I keep to the periphery, I'm keeping to more of where the fresh produce is, or if maybe fresh produce isn't in my budget this week, can I steer towards the frozen produce? And thinking of just can I stay away from those like zigzagged aisles where all of those things are that I probably don't need, or if I need it, it tells me right above my head that, oh yeah, what I need is in that aisle. And I know that's something that I find helpful is having that list, and it helps my budget and everything else in between. And it means that I don't have to then go back for a second trip to get those one or two things, which right now is extra important.
Absolutely. Our family has also taken advantage of the kind of meal prepped in advance, where the company has essentially done the shopping for you. It shows up. Now I'm just looking for that person that comes and actually cooks and does the dishes. But again, then I think we're in a whole different category of need slash want. But certainly those types of options, budget permitting, are certainly that same concept of given the current climate, if you are in fact attempting to um, plan plan ahead what a meal is looking like without physically going to the grocery store like we maybe normally would.
Well, and one of the really fun things about a lot of the different meal delivery programs are you're trying a lot of different foods or a lot of new recipes that you otherwise might not have explored simply because they weren't in your normal rotation.
Absolutely. For my picky eater, we're still we're not there. They're too extreme.
A little adventurous.
Too extreme. Oh well. Oh well.
Oh yeah. So you kind of touched on it, but what do you find is really the difference between hunger and cravings? Because I know sometimes, especially when there are things already made for me in the fridge, it makes it easy for me to say, nope, you made that on Sunday. It was here for dinner Tuesday night. That was the plan. And I just don't feel like that's what I want, even though it's there and it's easy.
And of course, leftovers are great until you're on your third day of them. Then maybe they're not sounding so amazing. When we are hungry, there are typically physiological or physical symptoms or signs. Your stomach is growling. That is certainly a pretty significant giveaway that your body is asking for some fuel. There truly can be that psychological component where you actually feel kind of grumpy or grouchy, or that lovely phrase, I'm so hangry, where you are physically and psychologically impacted now because you are hungry. Craving would be something that we tend to connotate a little bit more with an emotional reaction. For example, a food that you would ordinarily not enjoy. Suddenly that sounds like a really amazing thing to have. Or that concept of, I've had an incredibly rough, stressful day and I need a gigantic bowl of ice cream with hot fudge and whipped cream and all of the fixins. That we are kind of looking at for a little bit of that emotional comfort, or something to, stimulate some of those serotonin or dopamine receptors that are begging for something enjoyable after a long, stressful day.
Well, and I love that you mentioned the hormonal aspect of it too, because when we do that comfort eating, it gives us that instant gratification, but it does absolutely nothing good for our gut. So when we think of, even just from the digestion perspective, thinking of being able to slow down and chew your food is really the first part of digestion. And that is such a big part in like signaling to your stomach that, oh, I'm listening to this response that you're giving to me. I'm listening to that grumble or that sensation that's here, and I'm responding to it, and I'm giving you what you're asking. You're giving your body what it needs. So that idea of chewing and then thinking of so much of our serotonin, those happy hormones, it's produced in our gut. So if our body isn't receiving the nutrients that it needs, and then there's something going on in our system, whether it's an inflammatory response of some kind or just our nervous system is so highly agitated that our body isn't able to absorb those nutrients, it's not producing all of those incredible hormones that help us stay balanced and help us kind of manage the ebbs and flows of daily life, especially right now when we don't have our normal routines and our normal fallbacks.
I know in our house we have just thankfully finished off the last of the Easter candy. Thanks, Easter Bunny. The fun size Kit Kats were a hot ticket item, and knowing that when you do consume that fun size Kit Kat, you can expect to get about 3 minutes of elevation of your serotonin and dopamine levels. 3 minutes. Which is why usually one doesn't feel like it's enough. And, if you're even taking into consideration, even if you have managed to consume 5 of those fun size in a short period of time, you have only bought yourself about 15 minutes of feeling better. And so just kind of taking that into consideration, again, I have certainly mentioned that it is all consumed, but the temporary effects of something is that piece when it comes to digestive health as well. The concept of while we are eating, we often are continuing to eat beyond that point that our body is actually signaling us that we are satiated or have had enough. And so Lauren's point of taking time to chew, really kind of pausing and taking that opportunity. And granted, that also may be altered currently, the opportunity to, go out with friends for dinner, or, invite friends over for dinner. That certainly sometimes inherently has both those good and bad qualities of mindless and opportunities for mindful. The change that we have probably noticed when it comes to that digestion piece is my family and I have probably eaten together more meals together the past 6 weeks than we probably had in the prior 6 months. So if looking for a silver
positive spin,
a
silver lining,
and I do feel that that in that instance that has been a positive. It has kind of forced us to slow down and take that time. We normally do not have that opportunity to physically sit down all together. So that I would love to think is aiding the digestion process.
Oh yeah, well, and even just the idea of sitting down to have a meal, I know it's something that I definitely do better. Thinking of, okay, my purpose here right now is to sit down and enjoy this food. It's delicious and I should be able to enjoy it versus just thinking of, okay, this is something that my body needs and it's only fuel. Or the idea of, like, I'm very guilty of kind of doing some work while I'm eating my lunch, or kind of racing out the door, eating my breakfast, that I have those extra couple minutes to do whatever else in the morning. And that idea of actually sitting down and not doing anything else besides eating, I think we have kind of lost that with just everything else that we feel is important to accomplish in our days.
And you're right, this is a great time to perhaps implement those new strategies or different strategies. And acknowledging that when you are, for example, taking breakfast in the car, more often than not, it is probably something that is prepackaged, that you can eat somewhat neatly in the car. Perhaps drinking your breakfast as opposed to a whole food item. And one of the things that I have attempted to kind of stick with, even with an altered work schedule, I'm going to bring out my secret weapon here. I have made it a mission that whether I am physically leaving or staying put, I am pre-planning in my lunchbox what my lunch is going to look like. The steps from the fridge or lunch turning into a 3-hour block of time. This is one of those things that certainly does help with that. So just as a potential suggestion from that meal planning standpoint, that literally the act of planning and preparing what you are intending to eat for lunch can be one of those strategies that even if you are at home, kind of keeps you on track for what you may have taken with you um, had you been exiting for the day.
Hmm. Oh, yeah. Well, and just that idea of kind of thinking, what do I plan to eat this week? I know I eat just about the same thing for breakfast every week. So making like a big egg bake that has like a high quality protein and lots of vegetables in it is a really easy way for me to make sure that that first meal of the day is satisfying and kind of sets me up for success. And thinking of, okay, there's the rotation of things for lunch, the rotation of things for dinner. How does that help my body continue to feel good?
And I think breakfast is one of those things that I think is a very controversial topic.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, the concept of during awake hours, our bodies are very, very set up to be physically hungry and needing fuel about every 3 to 4 hours. So if you're taking into consideration however long you have slept, body has gone for a pretty long stretch and is meant to go for a pretty long stretch without food. But then once we are awake, breakfast absolutely sets that tone for the day. I know for myself, and again, thinking more pre 2 months ago, but
Mm-hmm.
if the morning had gotten away from me and then realizing at 11 o'clock, oh my gosh, I didn't eat my hard boiled egg and my bananas. um, that tends to be a day that I feel much more of those cravings during the day because I have not fueled properly earlier in the day. So I think breakfast is absolutely essential, and Lauren gives a fantastic recommendation of something that is involving, solid food, and you've got protein, you've got veggies, things that are inherently designed to make you feel more full and satiated for that next 3 to 4 hour window when your body's going to be looking for something again.
Oh, yeah. And I think so many of us, we fall back on, even if it's just one meal a day, having it be more of a liquid drink. And that's where we aren't chewing our brain and our body, they aren't communicating that they're receiving that fuel, that energy, that nutrition. So that shake, that even though it might have 3, 4, 5, 600 calories, and it should fill you up or give you some time to like kind of be a little tided over, your body doesn't feel that. So it just doesn't know. So instead of like a shake, what are some other like snack ideas or things to kind of meet that 3, 4 hour window that a lot of us in our normal workday don't have the opportunity to like sit down and eat some easy things to kind of snack on throughout the day?
Yeah, I am a big fan of hard boiled eggs,
Mm-hmm.
which of course takes some time and planning to have prepared. So I do think it's a great strategy if you enjoy a hard boiled egg, that or any type. You had also mentioned egg bake, but where you have something that is prepared in advance. You can do something very, very similar with different types of oatmeal, where you can actually prepare that in advance and continue to portion off in terms of breakfast items. I do think that some of the delightful add-ins, different types of fresh or frozen fruit, are a nice, or even sometimes the dried fruit. You get a little bit of everything in there.
Yeah, you get just that like little change in texture or a little sweetness or a little crunchiness, just those things that make it a lot more exciting than oatmeal.
And all of
Mm-hmm.
the interesting butters. You've got your sunflower butter and your almond butter and your peanut butter, and um, no matter what type of surface you enjoy putting that on, bagel, toast. I would also argue that avocado works very well on any of those items as well. And again, when you are kind of mixing the quote unquote healthy fats with your carb source, that does tend to be the type of item that sets you up for um, a, a good start to the day.
Oh, yeah, I like it. So it's kind of a nice start to the day, meals that we're usually maybe eating with a little bit less time, but meals where we are sitting down, what are some other strategies that we can use to make sure that we're eating mindfully versus just eating what's in front of us?
So, if we are talking at home, one of the things that we like to do in our house is we have two different size plates. So, just to kind of give you a little bit of scale here, um, we in general tend to eat off of this plate. We are limited just simply by the size of the plate as to how much we can put on this plate. Now, I can guarantee that when pizza is involved, this is typically the plate that shows up. Um, it depends on the food item, but one simple strategy is if you do have the two different size plates or two different size bowls, that one thing that you certainly can try that assists with kind of that portion control piece is attempting a little bit of literally a smaller vessel that you are eating off of.
Well, and it's so hard to find a small plate. Like, I think any of the plates that I have that are like small, what probably was meant to be like a first course or like a salad or something like that are my grandma's plates, or they are this little plate or what appears to be a little plate, but I think of the size of our stomach and how much food it actually is designed to hold and digest. And that little plate can hold way more than we need, depending on how long it's been since a meal or what type of food it is that we're eating. So, what a great visual to have and say, okay, I did eat what was in front of me. There isn't something that's going into the trash where I feel like I'm being wasteful, but I did also only have in front of me what I needed.
And I think also taking into consideration um, how you are eating. Is it something that you are eating with hands? And I will say that the mindless eating tends to fall on things that we eat with our hands. And again, I already kind of mentioned pizza. Any of the snacky items, we tend to eat more with our hands. And so the physical piece of an object, how big of a fork or a spoon are we using? That is one of those things that inherently can make us slow down, take our time while we're eating. And that allows the body to at least potentially alert us to how much we are eating, as opposed to eating until you feel like you're absolutely stuffed.
Well, I think of even like, I don't know if they even make them anymore, but what was or is a dessert spoon or dessert fork, thinking about how tiny those are. So, thinking of there's nothing wrong with enjoying a little bit of something sweet or a little bit of something that maybe doesn't add a whole lot of like physical value to your digestive system, but does just taste good. How tiny those utensils are compared to like a salad fork, where, oh, it's a lot longer prongs, and part of that is function, of course, but just thinking of, okay, when we are eating, what are some really easy ways that I can make it easier for me to eat this slower and feel full or satiated sooner?
And I know a common piece is particularly related to sweet treats. The concept of, I know if I have one bite, I need many more than one bite to feel that enjoyment, or that one bite isn't going to do it for me. One of the suggestions that I have for that are, again, the not only just the smaller size, because again, there are no quote unquote bad foods. No such thing. No such thing. It is unfortunately how we perceive that item, or potentially the feelings, emotional feelings that we have after we have consumed something that we have perceived to be bad. One suggestion is, again, kind of having that idea in mind of what you are planning on having for, and again, let's just call it dessert. And that if you have finished that what you have pre-planned as your dessert, you are still feeling like, oh, I need 2 more cookies and then I will
Mhm.
feel like that's the right amount. Knowing that anything of that sweet treat that we eat probably has about a 3-minute window of actually making us feel better. A suggestion would be literally doing anything else. Throwing in a load of laundry, going for a
Mhm.
walk. We have had some absolutely fantastic circuit workouts that are short. Trying a little bit of a short circuit workout right within your home, and perhaps when you are finished with that,
Are you still
perhaps
hungry?
I did some laundry. I don't really need a cookie. Okay,
Mhm.
that's probably not a great example, but um, the concept of allowing your body to have that short period of time as opposed to kind of giving in to that craving immediately.
Yeah, and just that idea of, it takes time for our body to digest things. So when we're sitting there and not paying attention or not listening to the cues that our body is giving us, or we're just bored, and I know that's something that I'm very guilty of, that like bored eating, is there's something else that I can do, some way to distract myself, some way to not feel bored and have that instant gratification from food? Are there things that I can either accomplish, or I love the idea of just taking a short walk or doing a really short workout. It might be I do a handful of squats and lunges and just a little bit of activity, because then you're still getting a lot of those really like positive happy hormones that last a little longer than 3 minutes. Like I know when I do get a workout in first thing in the morning, I feel like, okay, I had a really great start to the day and I just want to keep that going.
Very, very, very good point. Not ignoring that exercise component in general. I do think that there is a very strong connection between when we are moving consistently and taking into consideration what we are eating. I think that a lot of times the way that it's approached is I'm going to start exercising and I'm going to start eating well, and trying to
You're
make.
literally putting too much on your plate.
Yes, yes,
It's
literally.
overwhelming to start like 10 new things all at once.
Very much so. I do think that, trying things in those little bits, that I do think that they nicely complement each other, and knowing that overall wellness and just feeling fit and healthy is such a goal of everybody,
Mhm.
or at least is on the radar of everybody. That I do think that they complement each other very, very nicely.
Oh, yeah. So for people who are kind of falling into that category of struggling with mindful eating, what are a couple of things that you think that might be a little easier to start to implement?
So I have, this is a family favorite. I have Sun Chips here in this gigantic bag, which actually, in my opinion, as far as it goes, is a snack food. Not a bad one, barring any gluten and sensitivity
Mhm.
issues. But I'm sure that you have noticed that not only has the size of the snack bags, unless you're at Costco, shrunk, but they seem to be filled with almost entirely air. So almost half of the bag is air. So we absolutely make it a rule that when you are taking Sun Chips, there are 7 servings in here, which actually is 14 chips. All things considered, not
Mhm.
bad. Potato chips, oftentimes, if you look at the serving size, it's more like 6 chips. So double. I
Or
promise
like
I've.
quadruple.
Yes. um, but we make it a very consistent point that we do not eat our snacks out of a large bag. So, again, we are not physically counting out 14 chips, but that concept of we should get 7 servings at least out of this bag. So that is one of the things that we do to just at least make sure that we are doing our best to eat mindfully, because I can assure you, if putting this out at lunchtime as the bag, this bag would not survive a meal. It would be gone. and we don't have 7 people eating at the same time. So I do think that just getting into the habit of not eating out of containers or bags, and putting things into a pre-planned container is a great way to go about it. One other favorite snack that I brought along, and again, this sometimes can be a downfall to put things in. So I've got almonds, dried cherries, and M&Ms. When you have one of each in the same bite, it is a really delightful combination. And I have been scolded on a number of occasions that I cannot leave this out on the counter as is, because it does not last very long. So this, unfortunately, is the vessel, the pre-approved vessel for this delightful snack mix that should last several days instead of 2. So again, that concept of breaking things up into that pre-planned, and the amazing thing that I truly feel, if I have eaten this and gotten, the sweet treat of dried cherries and M&Ms, and just this, I feel that I have gotten a sweet treat for the day, rather than not having any concept of how many times I have
grabbed a
reached
handful
in there.
after handful.
Yes. Any suggestions that you have that you feel work well?
Yeah, I think the biggest one for me personally is making sure that I stay hydrated. So anyone who's ever been in the clinic with me knows that I carry around this giant water bottle.
Cheers.
Kristen has hers as well. But thinking of the idea that, okay, our bodies need to be hydrated. So we are supposed to drink about 50% of our body weight in ounces. So if you weigh 100 pounds, that means that you're drinking 50 ounces of water in a day. And if you're the type of person who has like a glass of water once a day, you don't make that big jump overnight to say, okay, I weigh 100 pounds, I'm going to drink 50 ounces. Your body's not accustomed to taking in that much water. So ease into it. If you drink a glass, can you go and drink 2 glasses for a couple of days until you feel like, okay, this is easy, this is attainable. But the reason why I really like having a water bottle like this is I know, okay, if I drink 2 of these in a day, and that's a day where I don't do a lot of extra physical activity, I'm getting what my body needs. And I have this really nice visual of, okay, well, it's lunchtime. My day is halfway over. Have I had most of this to drink, or do I have a little catching up to do? That way I'm not trying to drink a billion, what feels like a billion ounces of water at the end of my day, and then having to get up at night or things like that to really interrupt my sleep. So having that water there of, okay, can I make sure that I'm sipping throughout the day? So I'm listening to my body's signals when it says that it's hungry, and I'm not confusing hunger with thirst, because whether we're eating or drinking, it's coming into our body the exact same way.
And I know, without, implicating a bladder irritant too much, I know one of the beverages that Lauren and I really enjoy is any kind of a bubbly water. That sometimes just getting something that doesn't taste like straight water. I do think that is a common complaint. I would love to drink that much water, but I'm so sick of drinking water. I need something else. And so, certainly that is something that offers at least just a little different flavor. Or if you enjoy an herbal tea, same kind of concept, at least just gives something maybe just a little different, still predominant take-home product, without that guilt piece, which we can all live without.
Oh yeah, I know at the end of the day, when I'm like, I would like to reach for that something sweet, having a can of LaCroix, because it thankfully doesn't irritate my bladder, is a really great way for me to say, okay, let me have something that's a little sweet that has this different sensation as I drink it that's a lot more exciting than plain water is really helpful for me. And I know for people who have a tough time getting themselves to sip through the day, adding a little bit of flavor to your water, whether it's some mint, some berries, some melon. There are some really fancy diffusers out there if you want to go that route, or just chopping up some cucumbers and or pineapple or anything that gives a little bit more just taste to your water, because we aren't all naturally water drinkers, and that's okay. So finding those strategies to make sure that you're staying hydrated and aren't confusing those thirst signals with hunger signals that then become, let me just eat the bag of chip signals.
Thank you. No, no.
No.
Do we have a question, or is that
I
not
think
an
that
actual?
is Brian just saying hello.
Hi, Brian.
Well, any other kind of last minute thoughts or suggestions for people who are listening?
Oh, maybe there is a
Oh
question.
yeah. He agrees with us that drinking a glass of water can help urge that need to indulge. So definitely not alone in that.
Thanks, Brian, for for affirming that as a suggestion. Excellent. Um, Kind of in summary, I think kind of take home messages are taking the opportunity to plan. I think that there's a lot that goes into that, whether it's thinking ahead of what you are planning to eat. Um, that also takes into consideration how much at a single time, that what does that portion size look like? Taking the opportunity to actually slow down and enjoy what you are eating. Give your body that chance to acknowledge that it has been fueled properly. Not confusing those emotional pieces of boredom, anxiety, stress, or just feeling like I deserve this because I've had a rough day. Um, Taking that emotional piece out of it, which I will admit right now, I think is a
Easier said
challenge.
than done. A lot of these things are.
But I think that if it is possible to continue to enjoy food, remember that there is no such thing as a bad food or a bad choice, and when it comes to food, um, that if we can continue to try and take that emotional component out of it, I do think that um, that in and of itself is a great step toward eating mindfully.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us some of your great tips and suggestions. And if you're listening to this either right now or after the fact, and you have any other tips or things that you find helpful for yourself personally to eat mindfully, we'd love to hear them. And if you have any questions, feel free to send us a message or make a comment. And we are here in the clinic seeing patients as well as seeing patients online. So if you have anything that you'd like to share with us, we'd love to hear it. Next Friday, Rachel and I will be talking about pain. So if you're free next Friday around noon, we would love to have you. Have a great weekend.
Happy Friday!